Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for what will be a quick webinar to talk about the state budget from this year and the advocacy efforts that we're launching to get ready for next year. Just to let everyone know, we are going to be recording this webinar, and we will share the link afterwards. I'm Nora Degner, the Executive Director for the New York State After School Network. I'm very, very excited that you're joining us today. It's been a rocky and difficult and ultimately very disappointing budget year, but I think that we learned a great deal, and we're really eager to share that and get started for next year. Who I'm guessing are familiar, but I always like to remind you, NYSAN is the New York State After School Network. We're a public-private partnership that supports the growth of programs that increase access for all students to high-quality learning opportunities, social, emotional, and academic, outside the classroom. We're today very quickly about the budget and what happened this year. We're then going to talk about the initiatives that we're launching, getting ready for next year. One of the real takeaways from this year is those who are early are going to be our leaders, and we really want to take advantage of that lesson and get started. And then we'll talk about follow-up for the this call. Okay. So my apologies. Looks like we're on a little bit of a time lag here, but hopefully now we're set up correctly, and you should be able to see the slides as I'm speaking. So just to review for what happened in the state budget this year. As you probably know, Governor Cuomo proposed $160 million annually in after-school programs on top of the $57 million the state already invests, beginning in 2015-16. This was an incredibly exciting proposal. It would have served at least 100,000 students every year, and would really have, started to make a dent in the tremendous need that we know exists for school programs across New York. Unfortunately, the final budget included no commitment to new statewide after-school funding. What include the initial language from the governor's after-school proposal, which would have used the casino revenues to fund these new after-school programs. It redirected the first $162 million of those dollars to the gap elimination adjustment restorations, which is a particular kind of school aid. It led that remaining funds could be used for gap elimination adjustment, foundation, which is another type of school aid, or after-school programs. However, and this is the two important howevers there. There's no requirement that any one of those three options be adopted. So even though after school is on the table, there's no guarantee that it would be use of those funds. And equally importantly, the way the Division of Budget at the state is currently estimating casino revenues, we don't anticipate that there will be any funding in this revenue stream over $162 million until the fiscal year 2017-2018, so the spring or fall of 2017. So we're saying that in practice, this is in fact no commitment to after-school funding statewide. We highlight, despite our advocacy efforts on this, there was no specification put into the language that these funds would be used for after-school programs done in partnership with a community-based organization. It's an issue that we will continue to revisit next year. For the city, as many of you know, New York City's mayor had made a strong proposal for after-school programs for all middle schoolers, and he had requested the state to do an income tax increase for New York City residents to pay for that program, as well as pre-kindergarten. And the Assembly did put that proposal in their budget. That tax increase was not in the final state budget, and there was in fact no explicit funding for after-school for New York City in the final state budget either. You may remember that the states put in $200 million of state funds for that purpose. What New York City did get was an increase in the foundation aid, which again is a type of school aid that they use for after-school programs. Understanding from what the mayor said in his press releases and public statements is he is planning on using some of that money to fund after-school middle school in New York City. And there was no explicit commitment at the state level to after school in New York City, and that was, also a disappointment. On the positive note, all of our existing funding streams were held at the same level that they were last year, so there is still, everyone can remember, there is still sufficient funding for Advantage, for ESD, SVP, for YDP, and Summer Youth Employment did see an increase of $2.5 million. As those of you who get SYEP dollars or work with SYEP youth are probably aware, there is an increase in the minimum wage that kicks in this year, and so that increase will apply to SYEP youth as well. So unfortunately, even though the SYEP allocation was increased, we're currently anticipating that fewer students will be able to participate in the program because of the need to increase the minimum wage payments to those participating students. Childcare subsidies, I know some of you do use for your after-school programs, did substantial increase. For the first time, the state has made an increase this large in quite a while, and that actually, I think, was a win overall for the childcare and after-school community. There also was a provision put in the budget, which we supported in past years, that makes sure that income earned by teenagers isn't included in their family's eligibility determination. And that's a really important thing for all of us who employ teenagers in our programs and would never want those small additional dollars to be the thing that tips their younger brothers and sisters out of getting subsidy, eligible for subsidy. So that's a very positive thing in the budget. Community schools grant program the governor initiated last year. There was funding in this year for an additional round of awards. It's unclear exactly what the level of those awards will be, but it could be up to $15 million, and we hopefully will know fairly soon how large of a competition the state is planning on doing. Extended learning time, I know many of you are still waiting for decisions about those grants, which unfortunately I have no additional information on at this time. That program was continued, but no money was put in for a new round of funding. But we do anticipate that when those grants are announced, there will be sufficient funding for the 3-year commitment that the governor had put forward in the grant application. The reality on this budget was that we did lose ground, and we did gain stability that was exciting, and we were really happy about, but we didn't really win ground either. It was really disappointing to see the proposal put forward by the governor not be strongly backed by either house of the legislature. And our big takeaways from this really are that we not had a loud enough voice across the state on behalf of after-school programs. What we heard consistently, particularly from the education committees, and again, I think one of the important things to keep in mind here is that our funding has always been split between education and children and family services, but the larger dollars in the state are in the education budget. And so if we have an opportunity to get the kind of increase in program growth that the governor was putting forward, it's very likely that those dollars are going to come ultimately out of the education budget. What that means in practice for us is that the education committee chairs, the education committee members, our partners in the education field locally all need to really understand and be invested in the importance of after school. And a lesson that we learned this year is that there are still a lot of folks in the education leadership community that don't understand the value of after school, that don't necessarily understand how after school is different, even if it's related to the school day, and they are generally positive about after school as a nice thing to have. There's not a level of urgency about it. We all know that it is urgent for our students and it is urgent for our communities, and we really have an opportunity this year to work together to spend this year leaders understand the urgency of after school so that we can hopefully come back next year to a similar kind of proposal and maybe have some success. So really are having this webinar to be able to do, and what we are committed as a NYSAN policy committee, who we met discussed this as the budget was winding down, is really to taking the lessons learned and starting immediately and moving forward for next year. So we have some really key goals around this. First is just to keep the momentum going. Many of you did fantastic work this year. You called your legislators. You wrote letters to the editor. You reached out to your parents and asked them to make calls or to write letters to the editor. You came to Albany and delivered or participated in a rally. You really did you did our advocacy alerts, which we'll talk about in a little while. You really took the sort of next steps in stepping up, and we need to keep that momentum going. We need to help everyone that we work with, our staff members, our parents, our partners, if you're regional network leads, to understand that at the end of the day, this kind of an advocacy process really is a year-long process. It'll ramp up much more intensely in January, February, March next year, but we need to be laying the groundwork now so that our legislators are actually primed to hear our message when we need their support come next spring. Active engagement. Really going to speak a lot about the fact that we need our legislators engaged early and often, and we need our parents and our education leaders, our school superintendents, other folks who can influence these decisions to also get actively engaged over the long term. We're going to talk about streamline our outreach efforts and coordinate them and make sure that we're maximizing impact. Help make this possible, we've actually outlined, and again, I'm very grateful to the NYSAN Policy Committee for all their work on this, a thematic calendar to help organize our advocacy activities over the year and keep a little enthusiasm and a little bit of a new learning going on so that we're all kind of, again, on that coordinated page. We'll then work on helping make sure everyone has consistent messaging tools available to them that they can easily adapt and adopt for their localities. And again, to keep it simple for folks to advocate, but also keep the pressure on. And finally, we're going to be a quick reminder every month of activities that you can do, and really encouraging people to find the right level that that you can take on and commit to, and really go with that. So, what are we doing this year? Well, we outlined a whole calendar to help you get started, and we're actually going to share this calendar with you along with the recording of the webinar so that, again, everyone in the field can be on the same page and start thinking about ideas now. So, our big takeaways from this year: we need to reach our early, often, and on a more level. We need to reach our news media early and often and on a more personal level. Those two levers of influence that our programs really need to get buy-in and support and awareness with. So April, for those of you who are regional network leads, we are hoping that you will really take the time to thank everyone in your network that participated this year. And we certainly, I want to say very much a thank you to everyone on this call, because I'm guessing that if you're on this call, it was because you're interested and did something this year, and it made a huge difference. There was a moment when I walked into Senator Seward's office, who's represents part of the middle of the state, and several folks from his district had made phone calls or sent faxes in the previous day. And I said, I'm here with the New York State After School Network. I'm guessing that you might have heard from a few of your constituents about this issue. And the receptionist looks at me and she goes, oh, yes, we've heard. That's exactly the kind of reaction that we need to be getting from every office when we walk in to talk about after school. They don't really care about me. They care a great deal about their constituents and the folks in their communities who receive this funding and care about these programs. So my job really is to coordinate your efforts and to consolidate your efforts and do that follow-up with the offices and get the nitty-gritty technical details to them, but they're only going to care because they've heard from you. So I'm really grateful for all the work that you did this year to raise the issue with them. Knows we've worked with a number of the regional networks and other providers across the state to submit letters to the editor and all major upstate papers expressing our disappointment about the outcome of the in terms of after school. It's one is run in the Journal News, one is run in the Buffalo News. We're hoping to have several others run in the next couple of days. We will keep doing activities like that, and we're going to talk in a little while about some of the examples that we're hoping you'll undertake in April as well. Similarly, May, our theme is going to be local leadership for after school, building on NYSAN Summit, which is happening in Buffalo on May 12th. And we are going to reach out and support our local leaders, have been supportive of after school, and thank them for that, and really work on engaging them at a local level in building support for after school. June, end of the year. Let's invite our electeds and our media to our end of the year celebrations. Let's really use that opportunity to think we want to engage parents, we want to engage families, but we want to engage our electeds and our media as well. Let's talk about our student achievement. If you've had fantastic outcomes for a student who graduated despite not being expected to do so, in part because of the support of your program, let's tout those achievements. Let's write a letter to the editor talking about that student's activities. Try to get a local reporter to do a piece covering that student. July, the importance of summer programs and how much they really make a difference for keeping kids safe, but for preventing summer learning loss. We're assuming everybody's going to take a little bit of a break, refresh, and get ready to come back for September, where we're really going to push on back to school. NYSAN will try to get op-eds in some of the major upstate papers, hoping to work with some of you to get the same things done coming from you in your local communities and your local papers. And again, if you're having program kickoff events, invite your local electeds, invite your local media, get people interested and involved, let them have a chance to see what it is that you're going to be offering students this year. October, it's on after school. I know many, many, many of you, I think a couple hundred of you across the state, do events. Let's see if we can make sure that those events include elected officials and include your local media. Help your students use as an opportunity for civic engagement. Do a letter writing campaign. Have them reach out and make that invite for a local elected official to come and speak to them. Really use the goals that you have for that event to build towards larger state goals as well. We're going to focus on active alumni, and this actually, many of you make a real point of trying to hire students that have gone through your program, and so you have high school students or college students who have come back and can really talk about the impact the program has made for them. Or maybe you have alumni that you've really changed their lives and you've kept in touch with them over the years. Can we do a press release or a letter to the editor? Can we help you, do something to publicize those stories and let us then build a record that we can to your local electeds to say, look, these are examples of how your program has really changed lives in your community. In December, we'll focus on the work that you all do that gives back, the volunteering, the lives, the ways that you as a program contribute to your community. So again, we'll circulate this as a whole calendar, but I wanted to emphasize that the idea here is that you do so much and you all are so often so busy doing those things that you don't necessarily take those opportunities to highlight the incredible work that you do. So the goal with this calendar is just to be a little bit of a reminder every month, hey, I should do something to brag about our outcomes, our program, our contributions. And in doing that bragging, I'm not just helping my program, I'm helping move after school across the state, because those people who make decisions will have a chance to hear about the impact that we have. So the kinds of activities you might do are extensive and redo, again, focus on building a relationship with your legislators, your elected officials, and the local media. So it might be calling offices or actually visiting offices. It might be just inviting the legislators to come visit your program. Again, it's a tremendous learning opportunity for your students because they to ask questions, get civically engaged, but it also gives the legislator a really great opportunity to see your program in action. We are to help you write op-eds or letters to the editor. We'll be circulating templates that align with the theme for each month and providing really straightforward instructions on how you go ahead and submit something like that. And that's the kind of thing where we'll be looking for your feedback as we go along too. How can we make the process easier? How can we help you get parents engaged to do letters, get other stakeholders in your community engaged to do letters? The letter in the Buffalo News actually came from a partner of our local network at Buffalo State who runs a center on excellence in education and wrote a really great letter about how after schools can support the kind of work that they support around helping students achieve in low-income communities. So those kinds of opportunities we're really to help you find someone locally that can help be a voice for what after school can do. We'll try some Twitter town halls and other ways of using social media, and we'll hope to get you engaged in that. And then we really are going to encourage you to get local media involved as much as possible. And again, this is really about building a long-term relationship. One of the lessons that we learned from this budget is that reporters know what pre-kindergarten is. When we said UPK or pre-K, reporters knew what we were talking about. School was much, much less familiar. And when reporters are not familiar with something, they tend to be much less interested in it. And it's a big human reaction, like anything. We gravitate towards the things we understand. So spending some real time meeting the folks at your local paper who cover education issues or local issues, inviting them to things regularly, chatting with them when they come, sending them a quick press release when you're going to do an event. Maybe you're having a Lego robotics competition. Invite them to come see it. Maybe you're doing a theater performance or a dance performance. Make sure that they have an invitation to the event. And that over time will build their familiarity so that when they're then asked to comment or write a story about a larger budget proposal, they have some context and they really understand what that's going to mean in the local community. We will be providing as many resources as we can to support this, and one of the things that we're going to be asking for your feedback on is how we can do a better job in supporting you in the work that you want to do locally. We know advocacy is not your full-time job. It will never be your full-time job. It's likely to be a teeny tiny fraction of your job. But it's a really, really crucial one, and one where, again, we know that you stepping up and doing this is what's actually going to make the difference. So we're going to do our best to make it as easy as possible. We'll be providing templates for letters to the editor, call scripts for calls to legislative offices. We will know that you have that you can print out and edit if you'd like, or just use as they are. We will work our best to make sure that you have templates for or sponsorship requests that you'd like to do for Lights On After School. We'll put forward some models for press releases and other ways of doing media outreach for those of you who are not part of a larger organization that has media. We also will be happy to work with folks who are part of larger organizations to work with your media and communications staff so that they have on hand lots of relevant after-school materials that they can then work into the work that they do over the course of the year. And then, as I said, we're going to be moving forward with a monthly advocacy guide that's going to have 3 to 5 simple steps that we're asking you to think about taking that month, so that, again, we give everyone a chance to think about this as a long-term process, not something that you're supposed to, all be able to cram in February in a crazy crunch. What you'll be seeing every month, and starting actually this week, following up on this webinar, will be a quick little email that'll have 3 to 5 ways to get involved, and at different levels of target audiences, so that, again, you can also work on your own professional development and focusing on areas that are of most interest to you. So, for instance, do media, reach out to your assembly and member senator. We're going to be hoping people will be calling offices all month to express their disappointment. People need to hear us that it was noticed that they didn't do anything for us. One of, I think, the most difficult things for a lot of advocacy efforts is that you fall over once the decision has been made, and actually really at the end of the day that's the best time to reach out, because then you have a chance to give feedback on what happened and what the decision was that was made. Similarly, like I said, we've been working with people all across the state to try to get letters to the editor, really reminding the news folks that this was not the outcome that we hoped for, that this left 100,000 kids without a new opportunity. And again, we really want to get that message out. And then just reaching out to your parents and letting them know what happened. Not necessarily asking any of them at this point, but again, thinking about this as a year-long process of building your parents' awareness and understanding, so that when you're hoping to get them mobilized and engaged in January and February, they already understand the issues, they understand the context, they understand how part of this conversation can help improve opportunities for their own kids and their neighbors' kids. So again, it's a long-term opportunity to build allies and build understanding. we, part of this, are going to be doing our best to make messaging materials and available to you, and really encourage folks' messages that we've heard working with legislators and others. And these are a few of them. You'll notice if you've read any of our materials, we've just drilled home over and over again this year. And we'll share as we go along key talking points for each sort of month. But the key points really are: we keep kids safe, we help them improve their social, emotional, and academic outcomes, help working parents. And so building that, the kinds of messages about partnering relationships, developing areas of interest, promoting social and emotional skills, improving their college and career readiness, and really, again, focusing on the social emotional components of that, improving school attendance, reducing behaviors, through that getting to higher achievement and increased graduation rates. Again, really emphasizing that it's about consistency. Our students really need the opportunity to participate in these programs for years to see these kinds of outcomes, and we've been very concerned about it in all of our messaging, that this is not, we're not saying that this is a quick fix. We are saying that if you invest in these programs and build them over time, we'll see the kind of outcomes that our students need. And we, again, will be happy to work with anyone on messaging for your own program or for the field at large if this is something where you really feel like you have questions or ideas, or you want to work with on how you talk about what you do. Again, I want to pause to emphasize what you do is so amazing, and people need to hear about it. And we've definitely had a couple of opportunities. Allie and I presented at the National Afterschool Association and had a truly bizarre moment where we asked everyone in the room to tell why schools needed community partners for their after-school program, and everyone was silent. And I know that you all know, I know that everyone in the room knew what it was that they brought to the table, but there needs to be a much greater volume shouting out what those things are that you contribute and the difference that you really do make. Community organizations and community partners are a really crucial part of this story. So anything that we can do to help you story and tell that story and tell that message, we are really happy to contribute to, and we want to work with you on. And look, we're going to end on time, and we have lots of time for questions, and I hope there will be some. I know a lot of information quickly, but we also know that you're busy and we don't want to take too much of your day. The emphasis here is on small bits of things done over time, and that really we're hoping that doing so we won't make it too much unmanageable for anyone, but really will make a difference for our students. So as follow-up, you're going to get a link to a quick SurveyMonkey, really asking for some feedback from you. What kinds of activities are you interested and willing to do? What kind of things do you need support from NYSAN for? What kinds of social media do you use already that you might be able and willing to use for after school? You're currently connected to local networks, either the ones that are affiliated with NYSAN or if there's other organizations that you work with locally that bring together after-school programs or youth-serving programs. Again, so we can help figure out how to best reach the folks who are already coordinated and already working together. We really want to make sure that everyone's efforts all sort of are aligned in the same direction, and that we're providing whatever support it is that you need locally to do what you think needs to be done locally. And then finally, we're asking for input on membership dues. So one of the things, I hope many of you were able to use the e-advocacy email that we sent out. We were very, very lucky. The YMCAs agreed to loan us their system to do those emails. And I got a lot of feedback from people saying, this is awesome, why didn't we have this before? NYSAN should all be doing these. And the answer is that we don't currently have funding to pay for a system like that. Most organizations that do systems like that do so because they have membership dues or other ways of raising unrestricted funding that allows them to buy e-advocacy systems, to hire a media consultant, to hire a lobbyist. We were incredibly lucky this year that we had a small grant from the Bound Foundation, which allowed to hire a media consultant. We've never had something like that before. We would love one every year. It made a huge difference in terms of what we were able to do with getting statewide media interested. But again, we're going to need to find a funding stream to support that if that's something that the field would like to have available to them going forward. So we're going to think and give us some feedback as we begin to consider many, many different kinds of options about how we do this for next year. Also are going to be offering, as part of that media consulting contract that the Bound Foundation so generously supported, we'll be offering a Media 101 session. It'll be a webinar that Susan Petto, our consultant, will do, and will be really geared towards programs that don't have a media person on staff, but really would like to be able to do a little bit more. We'll go over the basics of doing a press release, the basics of doing a letter to the editor, the basics of talking to a reporter and keeping on messaging and on point, just so that, again, we really build the professional capacity of this field to represent yourselves. And it's something we're very, very excited about as a kind of professional development capacity building for program directors and for executive directors, to really have that chance to think about beyond your work in the media area. We'll send a date very soon. It'll be sometime in May. I invite you to stay connected with us. We are going to be doing a website upgrade, but in the meantime, please make sure that you're on our listserv. You can follow us on Twitter. You can like us on Facebook. We are doing more and more to that we get the messages out to everyone in the field. If you are not on our listserv or know others who are not on our listserv, please do make sure that you're signed up. That's how these advocacy guides will go out. And it's really our best way of getting information out to the field. Anyone who's got questions would love to take them. You can type them into the box on your right sidebar where it says Q&A or where it says chat, and let me know what else you would like to know. Not a mute function. So I think we've got all of the voice calls muted, so unfortunately it would be easiest if you want to type in rather than try to raise your hand or otherwise let me know. We're waiting to see if anyone has questions. I will just reiterate again that one of the places that it'll be really important for you all to do work, this is to your school leadership. We really were support of there being additional funding for school, and we really want to make sure that after school and school are never put in a position of being seen as somehow in conflict. And so it's going to be very important that, again, as we talk about after school funding potentially coming through education committees and through the education budget, that you work with your school superintendents, your school leadership, to make sure that they understand the impact of after school and are supportive of after school as part of the overall universe of education funding streams. The questions that just came in is how the Department of Education in advocacy efforts, and I assume you mean your local department. So there's lots of ways to do that. They can send letters. We had, I think, 6 or 7 school superintendents send letters to the education committees asking for more after-school funding. We've had a couple of superintendents who've just written an op-ed and submitted it to the Times Union for consideration to, again, speak about how, as school leaders, they see the importance of after-school funding and would like the state to support it. From a parent of a child in a school district, that her school district sent an email to all of their children's families every day, asking them to call their legislators and ask for more school funding. It would be amazing if all those emails going out from the school district had also asked the legislators to support more funding. School districts have lots and lots of ways that they leverage their abilities to do advocacy, and you can absolutely ask them to do the same for after school. And we're happy to work on that. We can draft op-eds, we can draft letters to the editor, we can work with school districtors on letters to send to legislators. about the relative value of electronic campaigns. That's a good question. Electronic campaigns are the least valuable thing we do, but they certainly are valuable and worth doing, and I know are very helpful, particularly with parents and other groups that don't have a lot of time. Phone calls are more effective, and we really do encourage that if anyone can take the 3 to 5 minutes to make that phone call, to really do so instead of sending an email. And the reason is simple and logical to your own experience. Usually someone has to pick up and interact with that phone call. It makes it much more sort of in the forefront of their mind. There's actually a calculation that congressional offices use, and I don't remember the exact weighting, but it's based on the amount of effort that it took the person to do that thing. So a written letter is the piece that's taken the most seriously, particularly if it's not a template letter, if it's an like a handwritten, independent composed letter. That's something that took a ton of time, and they weighted as, let's say 50,000 people care about that issue. A phone call takes less effort than that, but still takes effort, so they weighted as saying that 10,000 people care about that issue. And not a great deal of energy. They weighted as saying that 1,000 people care about that. So it's absolutely, advocacy is a valuable thing to do, particularly if we can generate hundreds of emails, and particularly if it's a way for you to get your parents involved and start building their commitment. But we certainly don't want to say that it's the most important thing, and we really do hope that particularly those of you who are active in the field will take the time to make phone calls in addition to sending emails. Do we have questions? After-school programs go if parents don't understand the importance of after-school? Definitely a great opportunity, again, to really build your family engagement work and take some of the materials that we've put together to talk to legislators and actually use it to talk to your parents. We think about legislators as having, being very busy and having many, many things come at them. And the same is true of parents. So the materials that we've written to be, tell the top 3 sort of points in support very quickly might also be ideal for busy parents. And so welcome to look at the materials that we already have and see if they fit. If they don't, we're happy to do a modified version, and I actually think that's a great idea for us to add to the list of things that we will pull together, is a sort of why after school matters and why after school is more than babysitting, directed at parents. And we could certainly do that and pull out 5 or 6 key points in support that you could share, and maybe you include it at your parent night or in your parent newsletter or in your parent handbook, and use it as an opportunity over time to build their commitment to supporting these programs. Please put them in the chat box. Otherwise, we will let you all get back to your work in a timely fashion. But I'll hang on for one more minute. Sorry, one more question about what one can and cannot do as a nonprofit. And this is a really good question. I'm glad it came up, and I want to be very clear about this. Just because one is a nonprofit doesn't mean that you can't advocate. In fact, you're very much legally permitted to. What's important is that you stay away from elections. So you can talk about issues that you have expertise in as a program. You can talk about the importance of funding for your programs. You can talk about anything that impacts your programs and how you can serve students and the students that you serve. What you can't do is say, parents, you support Johnny because Johnny's better on after school than Bill is. You want to stay out of electioneering. You want to stay out of having anyone who is currently running for office be at an event as a candidate for an office. Elected officials who are in office and have been elected are there to represent the community, and it's absolutely appropriate to have them at events as that elected official representing that community. If you ever have questions about the laws on those things, again, we're always happy to talk about that, to provide resources. But in general, everything that we've been talking about is within something that after-school programs and nonprofits in general are completely allowed to do, and we very much hope that you will, because quite frankly, other folks in other fields are doing it, and we need to get ourselves in there and have our voices at the table with the same volume that other folks are. Any other questions? Okay. Appreciate you joining us today. I'm really looking forward to working with you in the coming year on these advocacy efforts. I hope that you'll take the 2 or 3 minutes after this to fill out the survey and just, again, give us a little bit of input so that we work to make the work that we're doing is going to be as effective as possible for you, and we really meet the sort of needs that the field has. Feel free to kick me an email at any point with additional questions or additional ideas, and we'll look forward to continuing to working with you all year. We will also send around the recorded webinar and the calendar for advocacy activities so that, again, everyone can sort of save that and have it in front of you. Wonderful day, and thank you again for all that you do for our students and for our field.